Welcome to United Logistics and Military Corporation presents Guide for the Kill, Basic Dogfighting Tactics, History, and Strategery. Now, United Logistics and Military Corporation, or ULMC, is an organization, a clan, a guild, I don't know what the cool kids call them these days, but a group of buddies who will be flying and fighting together in Star Citizen as well as Elite Dangerous. So, if this presentation interests you, you'll find a lot of things to be insightful and would like to join us, head over to http://ulmc.co and join us there for further discussions on our forums. You can also join our RSI page, an organization in Star Citizen if that's your bag. We really haven't set up too much officially yet in Elite Dangerous, probably when beta comes out, the standard beta. So, with all of the advertisements out of the way, but wait, there's more! There's an entire guide on the rules and if and or buts on aerial combat and its history. So, stay tuned. Same bat channel, same bat, something. Okay. Initiative, aggression, air discipline, and teamwork are words that mean something in air fighting, as said by Sailor Malan. We'll get into who Sailor Malan is in a few minutes when we talk about the history of dogfighting, at least the real-world history of aerial combat and dogfighting, which began a century ago with World War I and these newfangled flying contraptions. Started out, you had scout and observation planes on both sides, spotting artillery, taking pictures, occasionally dropping hand grenades on the other guys' trenches. Well, as they became more and more of a nuisance, they would run into other scout planes, and they would start taking along pistols, shotguns, rifles, and started taking pot shots at each other. Eventually, this led to some brilliant young youths deciding to strap machine guns onto their planes, and this led to the development of the fighter plane and the birth of aerial combat as we know it today. Now, aerial combat itself, and the study of which, and the development of what is kind of the basis for all modern air combat tactics, was the result of this man, a German pilot, Oswald Boelcke. He wrote the Dicta Boelcke, which are the enshrining of those rules. He was instructor to Manfred von Richthofen, a.k.a. the Red Baron, dubbed a gentleman pilot by the British press, died in a mid-air collision with a friendly pilot, ironically in violation of rule number 8 of the Dicta Boelcke. Jasta II was renamed Jasta Boelcke in this order by the Kaiser, I think in about June of 1916. So let's talk about where Boelcke is coming from, because during 1914 and 1915, during the very early days of aerial dogfighting and combat, it was primarily looked upon as a sport engaged by the gentlemen, or the upper-class former nobility of Europe, with much of the same ideas of chivalry combat, or chivalrous combat, the way of the knight. So these were modern-day knights going one-on-one against a fellow gentleman soldier of the other side in an air-to-air duel. This was much of the opinion taken of between pilots in 1914 to I'd say really late 1915. And history kind of bears this out, that during this time period, a Sopwith Camel pilot had a life expectancy on the front lines of 2 weeks because of the way that they treated this. And so you basically had these errant knights engaging in combat, and Boelcke was the first one to come around and say, this is bullshit. So he codified his Dicta Boelcke. Try to secure the upper hand before attacking. If possible, attack the sun behind you. Always continue an attack once you've begun. Open fire only at close range with an opponent squarely in your sights. Keep your eyes on the opponent. Do not be deceived by ruses. Attack from behind if possible. If an opponent attacks you, fly to meet the attack. Remember your line or lines of retreat. In squadrons, don't attack the same target. You shouldn't have 2 planes trying to attack the same target. Ironically, again, he died in a mid-air collision when him and another member of his squadron inadvertently were going toward the same target and collided. Now, you have to remember that in those days, to communicate, they had to communicate by yelling or signal flags or flares. They didn't have radio or voice communication. So that's partially what led to his death. There is a bit of irony there. But let's go through the Dicta Boelcke kind of more in depth on what he was talking about. When he's saying about try to secure the upper hand, specifically with the sun to your back, well, back in those days there was no radar or other sensors. You had the Mark I eyeball. And the Mark I eyeball is conveniently blinded by sunlight, especially if you're trying to look directly into the glare of the sun. It's very easy for that to then hide and mask you and your squadron. So as a result, if you're attacking with the sun to your back, it increased the likelihood you could approach an attack then by surprise. Always continue an attack that you've begun. What a lot of young pilots would do is they would start an attack run on an enemy fighter and then break off. Well, now the enemy fighter knows he's being shot at. He knows that you've turned away. He just turns around, gets on your 6, and kills you. So once you've committed to an attack, you need to stay committed to that attack until you're either forced to disengage by somebody else coming in to play spoilers, or the target is dead. Because if you turn and present your ass to the enemy, they're going to shoot at it. Open fire only at close range with an opponent squarely in your sights. This has to do more with the weapons of the era. You only carried 100 to maybe 300 rounds of ammunition. That was enough for maybe 30 seconds of sustained fire. Machine guns were horribly inaccurate past about 100 yards or 100 meters, so about 300 feet. So as a result, you wanted to get as close as you could and make sure that you were within the effective range of those guns and then kill them. Keep your eyes on the opponent. Do not be deceived by ruses. Now, this has really two meanings. One is oftentimes you would pepper somebody's fuselage, then they would act like they had been hit and were diving down. And a lot of pilots would then ignore them and say, oh, well, he's dead, he's out of the fight, and then go look for another target of opportunity. Well, meanwhile, the pilot who'd been diving will pull out of the dive, come back up, and he's on your 6 and killing you instead. So this led to a lot of pilots actually following a plane down, and you'll see this in World War II footage as well, that they continue to fly until that plane impacts the ground or a wing falls off or something of that nature to make sure that that enemy is dead and out of the fight. Another way this could be, a ruse is a couple pilots come in and then pull you away into an ambush, into a dense asteroid field where all of his buddies are hiding ready to attack you. So don't be deceived by ruses. Attack from behind if possible. This is a little bit modified if they got turrets back there, but that's ideal because it's a lot harder to see behind you than in front of you. And if an opponent attacks you, you want to fly to meet that attack, because if you pull away, once again, you present your ass in to be shot at by the bad guy. If you fly into the attack, you're decreasing the amount of time that he's going to have a firing solution on you, forces an overshoot, and then you two are starting to maneuver, and then hopefully you can maneuver to regain or gain an advantage over the guy shooting you. Remember a line of retreat, and squadrons don't attack the same target, although this is something that's more unique to atmospheric combat than, say, necessarily space combat, simply because there you're dealing with the ground. I've often heard Israeli pilots, say that you can be in a fight 10 against 1, but there can only be one aircraft at a time occupying your 6 o'clock position. Because again, if more planes try to come in and occupy that 6 o'clock position, let's say high or low, it increases the likelihood that those planes are going to collide with each other than they are to try to kill you and gang up on you. Now, it's a little bit different in space combat because we're not dealing with gravity and other forces, nor is there a ground per se. So it is quite impossible for somebody to, bracket you and attack from a high, low, and multiple angles at the same time. So kind of keep that in mind. Next off, we have Adolf Sailor Malan. He was a South African pilot, served in World War II, the Battle of Britain. Now, we're talking about a different era here. Planes were substantially better built, much better, laws of aerodynamics were much better understood. We had, instead of cloth draped over a wooden frame, we have full metal monowing planes and guns and weapons that can basically shoot 3 to 5 times further as an effective range. You also had your first gimbaled and holographic sights, as opposed to just iron sights, and a lot of other advances. So these were his rules, and I think that they apply better to the space combat genre. 1, wait until you see the whites of his eyes. Fire short, controlled bursts. When shooting, think of nothing else. It just becomes you and the other aircraft. Keep a sharp lookout. Height gives you the initiative. Make decisions promptly. Better to act quickly, even if the tactics aren't the best. Never fly in a straight line for more than 30 seconds. When diving to attack, leave part of your formation to act as a top guard. Initiative, aggression, air discipline, and teamwork are words that mean something in air fighting. And finally, go in quickly, punch hard, get out. So those were his rules. So how does that apply in space combat? Because, we're talking about atmospheric combat rules and things like that. I mean, there's a lot of differences. Space, you don't have drag. There's no energy fighting, as we understand it in air combat maneuvering, for instance. You're not trading airspeed for, basically energy in the form of airspeed for potential energy in the form of altitude, and then trading that potential energy for airspeed or energy in a dive. You're not dealing with turns and airspeeds and then performances at different altitude and differences and things of that nature. But there is a such thing as energy fighting when it comes to balancing out your energy supplies between like engine, shields, and weapons and things like that. It's just different in space combat games. You're dealing with 6 degrees of freedom, sometimes even 6 control over 6 independent axes. You do this in Elite Dangerous because you can not only fly forwards, but you can also fly backwards and then strafe up, strafe down, strafe left, strafe right, as an addition to pitch, roll, and yaw. So, how does that affect the fight? You can't fly backwards. Well, maybe if you're flying an Su-27 for a few seconds you can, but most other planes you can't. We have laser guns instead of machine guns. So long as you have energy, you can go pew 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 with lasers. Now, you might have to wait in between bursts for power to recharge, but you have basically an infinite amount of weapons or ammunition. Interestingly enough, though, we still have physical kinetic-based energy weapons in the form of multi-cannons in Elite Dangerous, Gatling guns in Star Citizen, as well as rail guns, mass drivers, and I think just standard ballistic weapons. So, interestingly enough, the holding fire until you see the whites of their eyes and getting in close and making sure every shot counts still applies if you're using kinetic-based weapons versus energy weapons. Energy weapons, you may afford to be able to take shots at a longer distance. It's just the nature of what you choose to outfit and the situation. Missiles, that's a big factor that Boelcke nor Malan really had to deal with. And then defensive gun turrets. Some of the ships have aft turrets. I don't think you want to be hugging the ass end of a Constellation or a Freelancer in Star Citizen. So they did have to deal with this in World War I, World War II, when you attacked bombers and certain scout crafts that had gunners in the back. You needed to approach from down below or aside, or if you're approaching a B-17 or a B-29 or something like that. So you see the basics still apply. Well, let's just go through a quick scenario and see how all of these basics still apply. This is me in Elite Dangerous in what will become a PvP dogfight. So here I am, firing short controlled bursts. Didn't get the kill. So let's go try the next one. Now I'm flying an Eagle. I had just bought the ship 2 days ago. This is the first time out of the barn with multi-cannons. I wasn't too thrilled with them, but here I come under attack. Unclear to me, am I caught in crossfire, or is this hostile PvP? Because there had been hostile PvP in the area earlier. Oh, it's hostile PvP. So, this guy maybe had attacked me. He's going to attack that Sidewinder, I think. So, instead of continuing the attack on me, he's going to the Sidewinder. As a result, I now know he's there, and I've maneuvered to engage, and I've got the advantage. Again, I'm flying a ship that I'm not that familiar with a weapons loadout I don't like, but that initial angle of attack that I had, I thought gave me an advantage, and I decided that I would press it. Now I have an advantage maneuverability. I know that. Know your ship. And notice how track IR, I have head tracking, so I'm keeping visual contact on him at all times, or almost all times. Very rarely does he ever leave my eyeball. You know, I'm using Mark 1 eyeball, so if he reduces throttle, I can reduce throttle. If he turns right, I can maneuver to counter. If he turns left, I can maneuver to counter. And then a great sigh of release there. Relief. So what are some things to consider in games versus, you know, real life dogfighting? Well, first, you have game mechanics. Secondly, game peripherals matter. He with the toys wins. I know I'm going to draw a lot of flack for this, but I'm sorry, it's absolutely true. I can almost guarantee you in that engagement, that other player did not have track IR. Just by the way that he was trying to fly. He was trying to do evasive maneuvers that he could figure out. He was trying to read his 3D radar. He did not have visual contact with me. If he did, his maneuvering would have been drastically different. I can almost guarantee you. That gave me a huge advantage. Now, him flying a Cobra and me flying just a Eagle means he's had more grinding experience. He has had more flight time than I have. He has, in most respects, a superior ship to what I had. But I still won. Now, the toys will not make a bad pilot good, but it will take two good pilots and decide who's going to win more often than not. So if you want to fly at an elite level and I guess I shouldn't use the term elite with elite dangerous, but if you want to fly at a very competitive level, you need to have the peripherals, the complete HOTAS system, track IR, maybe eventually the Oculus Rift. Something else to consider, flight skills are a diminishing skill. You need to fly, practice, play regularly. At least weekly, if not several times a week, ideally daily. The longer you go without flying, the more you lose that fine muscle memory control, and when you come back, you're not going to be as sharp, and not being as sharp will get you killed by other PvP who are. Finally, youth has an advantage in Twitch games. Now, I notice this more in Star Citizen than I do Elite Dangerous. That's because right now, Star Citizen flies like an FPS in space. So, you know, the kid that can move his mouse really quickly and get guns on you is in a definite advantage. And a little bit slower paced game where there's a little bit more deliberate flying and they just can't mouse cursor on you in zero order in like Elite Dangerous, you know, maybe youth isn't quite as an advantage. I find that patience oftentimes wins out over twitch. Being able to fly your ship to the maximum of its ability, understand tactical situations, and force the pilot to make a mistake, or be able to stay behind the pilot until he makes a mistake that you can capitalize and then kill him with it. More often than not, you'll find that the pilot who wins is the one who doesn't commit the mistake. The pilot who commits the mistake loses. So it's fair to say that you don't necessarily win the engagement so much as the other pilot loses it. So keep that in mind. Now this is the Dicta SkUnimatrix. Now, if you're not a member of ULMC, you can even willfully ignore this whole next section or rest of the video. Or you can try to absorb it, think about it, see what applies to you, what you like, what you don't like. However, if you are going to be flying with ULMC or considering flying with ULMC, you know, this is pretty much fucking gospel. So, rule number 1, you want to know the game, know your ship, and fight your fight. If your game, you know, in game mechanics is boom and zoom, fight boom and zoom. Don't get into a turning fight. If they're trying to get you into a turning fight, recognize it, disengage, get the hell out of there. Because if you're flying boom and zoom, chances are you have the advantage in speed. You can, well, do what we get to the next part. You know, outgun anything you can outrun, and outrun anything you can outgun. Never fly alone. Always have a wingman. This whole errant knight thing, remember, that Boelcke realized was bullshit? Well, it applies to games as well. Now, there are people who will bitch incessantly that Well, you couldn't kill me in a 1v1. I don't give a shit. I give a shit that you're dead. I don't care if you can take me one-on-one. If it takes us taking you on 3-on-1 to ensure our victory, by God, we're going to do it. Which leads me to the never fight in a fair fight. Only attack if you have an advantage. If you don't, run. You could be out several 100,000 credits if you lose. In Star Citizen, you could be out several hours of game time to get a replacement ship. If it's a larger ship, it could be several days of actual time to get that ship back. Once you're committed to an attack, always continue with that attack. Keep your eyes on the target at all times. This means you're going to want Track IR or Oculus Rift. Sooner, probably, rather than later. If attacked, turn into the attack, minimize the amount of time they can get guns on you, force an overshoot, and then hopefully maneuver to gain an advantage. Remember your lines of retreat. Getting the hell into Dodge is just as important as getting the hell out of Dodge. And believe me, I will be flying ships that I can get into trouble and make sure I can get out of trouble just as fast as I get into it. Trust your wingman to do his or her job in the attack and focus on the attack. Their job, if you are the lead shooter, is to cover your 6. You get somebody on your 6, trust your wingman to get them off of it. Now you may have to break left or right to ensure that happens and disengage from your current target. If that happens, listen to what your wingman tells you. If your wingman tells you to break right, break right. Work together as a team. Teamwork is a key to victory. Speed, velocity, acceleration gives you the initiative over, say, height in an atmospheric combat game. If you can fly faster than the other guy, you decide and dictate the terms of that battle. Because what you can do is then joust, extend, turn around, remerge. They can't do anything about it. If you get into trouble, you can run away. They can't. Keep your head on a swivel. Again, this goes back and is most useful when you have a Track IR unit or Oculus Rift. But remember, while you have sensors, there are stealth mechanics. There are paper, rock, scissors within both of these games. What you might not be able to see with sensors, you might be able to pick up with the Mark I eyeball. The Mark I eyeball is probably still your most useful sensor. Make your decisions quickly. A good plan executed today is better than a perfect plan executed tomorrow. So even if it's not an ideal situation, aka my fight with that guy in the Cobra Mark III, I'm in a ship that I'm not overly familiar with, I'm in a weapon setup that I don't particularly like. But I was in a very advantageous position to start that fight, so I had the initiative, I used it. Never fly in a straight line for more than 5 seconds, especially in Star Citizen where you have mouse and keyboard users who can simply move their mouse and target you in less than a second. I would even say that probably 5 seconds is a little generous. Probably you don't want to be staying in a straight line for more than a second or 2. Designate a top flight or cover formation in large-scale engagements. Have somebody that's ready to basically drop down or fly up or come in to counter any counter moves the enemy is making. Initiative, aggression, teamwork, discipline are all words that mean something in virtual space combat. I don't want a bunch of errant knights flying around me. I want people who are, have teamwork. I want people who are aggressive, who won't be, well, I don't know if I should engage. It's, well, the decision's been made to engage. Let's go. And then people who can seize the initiative. Hey, we have an advantage here. We should go kill them. And then the discipline part, kind of a twofold part of that. Part of it is things like combat discipline or comms discipline, brevity code, knowing their role within a fight. But more importantly, if you are flying wingmen to a lead, your lead's engaged, you don't go, hey, there's a target of opportunity over there, I'm going to go engage them, because while you're going to engage them, somebody's come down, dropped on the 60 of your lead, and he's now dead, and you have failed as a wingman. I would never want you to fly wing with me again. That's just how I am. So, go in, hit hard, get out. The longer a battle goes on, the more likelihood that the other guy is going to have reinforcements coming in to basically make your day a living hell. So don't give him that opportunity to call for help. Kill him quickly, run. Get out of the theater. Treat every pilot you come across, every opponent, as the very best player in the game, the very best NPC in the game, and fly like it. Doesn't matter where they are or not, treat them as they are the best pilot you have ever seen and is the best pilot in the game, no matter what their leaderboard rankings are, because at that moment, he's the best pilot, not you. So next, I'd like to go over a short glossary of terms that you're going to be listening or hearing in further guides and videos and stuff that I do. First, we're going to start with flight terms. Merging, you probably heard me talk about this. This is simply decreasing the distance between two ships. If you know you're about to become, or in that Cobra Mark III engagement, there was a couple points there where I knew he was turning to get an angle to attack, so I hit boost in order to merge, close that distance, force an overshoot so that he couldn't get a solid firing angle on me. Opposite of that is extend. That's increase the distance between the two targets, and so that you can then fly to maneuver. Because if you guys are too close together, you're never going to get an angle. Somebody needs to extend. Sometimes that leads to you winning. Sometimes it leads to you losing. Also, it's critical to extend if you have a wingman coming in, because all of a sudden he's dropped his velocity down to basically relative velocity down to almost zero. He's an easy target to pick off, so you boost out of there to give your wingman a clear shot. A couple things to keep in mind. And these are situations and scenarios that I will hopefully get video capture of, and we will discuss in further guide to kill, or guide for the kill videos. Situational terms. Engaged offensive, meaning I'm attacking to kill a target, or whoever is engaged offensive. Engaged defensive means I'm being attacked and somebody's trying to kill me while perfuming. Great, autocorrect there. But I'm going to keep it. Because this is strategery after all, and perfuming is a strategery action. But anyway, performing evasive actions is what's going to happen when you're engaged defensive. You know, if it's a one-on-one type situation, you're looking for cover and ways that you can fly and outmaneuver your opponent. If you're flying with a group of people, then you're simply engaging defensive to keep from being hit by the other guy long enough so that one of your wingmen or allies can come in and clear your 6 for you. Flight maneuvering. We'll go over these more in depth, but we're talking about scissors, jousting, circle fighting or turreting, circle jerking, sometimes you can almost consider it, evasive or jinking, and then you'll also hear me use the term slipping, which is really unique to Elite Dangerous Diaspora to a certain extent too, where you're using your lateral thrusters in conjunction with your thrust to basically remain perpendicular to the top of their ship. You're basically flying, if you would extend it, it would look like a T. He can't get guns on you, and you're just peppering the hell out of him. I did it to him, to that Fierce Mike guy several times in the video that I showed. So at this point, I want to say thank you very much for watching this nearly 30-minute long video on basically the history and basic tactics to fighting in a dogfight. I will be doing videos called Guide for the Kill, which we will discuss these tactics and things like that in more in depth. I don't know how many week series it'll be. It'll be as long as it needs to be. But it will air Fridays at about 3 p.m. Eastern. I shoot these videos usually on the weekend, edit them throughout the week, and then set them on YouTube to release on a schedule so that I can spend the rest of my week working, doing the regular day job stuff. And later this summer, I will be out of town on vacation, so I will make sure to double up on videos for those weeks and put them into the scheduled video category. So thank you very much. If you liked the video, please subscribe, subscribe to the channel, and there will be much more to come, including further way of the stick videos on tutorials of how to use a joystick and HOTAS setup, gameplay videos of just me flying around using all of that equipment so people have even more reference material, way of the kill, in which I will take engagements I've been involved in and maybe eventually people send me footage of, and I will break down the analysis of that engagement, of what went right, what went wrong, what was I thinking at that very moment, what was I not thinking, what should I have been thinking in many cases, and break it down kind of segment by segment, and for people to see how does a dogfight unfold, what are the tactics I choose to use when and why. Was it something that I consciously did, or was it just the act of trying to maneuver, and this is what ended up happening. So again, thank you very much for watching this video, and see you next week.